Okay, so first we'll look at the assignment instructions. This is a sort of like a podcast. A podcast are very popular now, often distributed on iTunes or other platforms. But the distinguishing feature is that it's only audio. There's no video at all. And so they're very nice to listen when you're doing something else, like driving. Then you can learn something from someone else. So all you have to do for this is you're making an audio recording of yourself talking about a topic of your choice, and then you also need to include some background music. It can be throughout, or it can be just at the beginning and then fade out, and then fade back in at the end for an outro, so intro and outro. And the length should be 1 to 3 minutes for the final recording. So that's not very long. It can be anywhere in this range, but Dr. Hartshorn's instructed me to take off like half a point if you go over or under. And then you also want to include credits and make sure you're doing a few different takes to get rid of your pauses, avoid saying and try to do it in a quiet place so there's no background noise. So these are items from the rubric. And so when I go in to grade these, Dr. Hartshorn has asked me to be a bit tougher than I am usually. If, for example, if he wants the average grade to probably be in the lower 90s. So this is an example of what you'll get at the end after you've submitted and after I've graded your work. And then I'll have comments here such as you did well to put it as an MP3. And it was a bit muffled. Maybe you had too many lengthy pauses, or you didn't give enough advanced organizers. An advanced organizer is when you tell ahead of time what you're going to be talking about in the presentation at the start. And then you can also follow that up with a recapitulation at the end where you briefly summarize. So the best way to plan it out is to write up a storyboard. Well, it's more like a script because obviously a storyboard is usually used visually, but you can do it with audio. And so here, this is an example for what we'll be working with tonight, a recording of Dr. Hartshorn introducing the multimedia project for this course, which is a project you'll have to complete by July 28th this semester. And of course, this audio assignment is due on the 21st of July. Can everyone hear me okay? Should I talk louder? Okay, I'm going to double check my audio settings. I've got my speaker, microphone. I think I'll just have to, I'll talk a bit louder. I'm using a webcam and I do have a bit of a quiet voice, so it's always a struggle for me to project. So here, what Dr. Hartshorn's done is he's laid out a script in advance for him to plan out his audio recording, and he's got some background music as a file, but we have to edit that file. And then he's made a recording ahead of time, but he's also got some pieces of audio to insert in the middle, in between each of these text that he's read out on a narrated audio file. So what we'll do in Audacity is we're going to start out by going to File and then New, and then there we have a new project, which we didn't actually need to do because we already had a new project. And here, you're not seeing anything at first because we haven't imported any files yet. So you go up to File and then go to Import, and you're going to select Audio, not any of these other ones, just Audio. And then in your Hartshorn Files folder, you'll see that we have 7 different files that we can import all at once. So I left clicked and I dragged, and then I selected all of those files, and then I hit open. But then when we have that here, we have 7 different waveforms you're seeing. You're seeing number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1. And if we play it, which this is the play button up here at the top left, it's a green button with a sort of an arrow. Hopefully that wasn't too loud for you all. So you'll see that it plays them all at once, and we can't use it like that. But what we'll do in the meantime is we're going to hit mute on all of these other ones, number 1 through 4, and also the last but not least. And so there's a little button that says mute there. So now I muted 5 of them, and then you'll hear um, right here. We're hearing that the music is very loud. It's much too loud. So to quickly reduce the volume, there's a little slider here. This is the second waveform with the big blue spikes. And on the left here, this slider is saying gain, and so dB stands for decibel. So if we made it plus, that would make it louder, but we want to make it quieter. So I'm going to do minus, I'll go all the way down, minus 36 decibels.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Module 8 overview for the multimedia project for EME 6507. In tonight's podcast,
All right.
we'll discuss some
so now the music's very faint. It's a little bit too faint. So I'm going to do minus 29 decibels.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Module 8 overview for the multimedia project for EME 6507. In tonight's podcast,
all right, so that sounds a bit better. I'll probably do minus 27 on this one. What we're seeing here is these are time stamps at the top where it has 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45, all the way up to 4 minutes. And the only thing that's 4 minutes is this Joe Farron file, which is an audio of a song called The American Dream. Now, obviously, we're not going to use all of it. We're just going to use part of it as an intro. And so to do that, the way I'll do it is I'm going to select at about 20 seconds here by left clicking. Just right here, I'm left clicking and I'm using this tool up here that says the selection tool. And then on my keyboard, I'm going to hold down the shift key and hit end. So I just held the shift key down, I hit the end key. You might not have that on a laptop, but another option is to just left click here and drag all the way to the right and then release. And then I'll just hit delete. So now I've cropped that down to 20 seconds. And I want to fade it in. The reason I want to fade it in is so that it's not just an abrupt transition at the end, but rather the intro music is faded in. So I've been playing around. I'm not too experienced with audio editing, but I've been watching Dr. Hartshorn's previous webinar and playing around with this. So this thing on the right of the selection tool, this one is called over here the envelope tool. And so what it does is it allows you to fade audio in over a period of time. So here you're going to see these two tiny white triangles that are showing. Now I'm going to click here around 5 seconds. And before I do that, I'm actually going to zoom in a bit. So up here, there's a zoom in tool. And so I'm hitting that plus up here. And now you see that the bar at the bottom is getting smaller because I'm seeing a smaller part of this audio at once. So now I've zoomed in so much that I'm only seeing the first 15 seconds on my whole monitor. And just let me know if you have any trouble hearing me by putting a chat in. Luke, I hope you're able to hear me. I'm trying to talk a bit louder. So now the first thing I might want to do is to actually select here and delete, because there's a bit of silence here. So I'm left clicking here and I'm deleting. You notice there's no blue here because it's showing you there's no audio there. And then this is a time. So let's say I take the envelope tool, I'm left clicking that. And then at 4 seconds, I'm going to left click. Oops. If you have to undo, you can always do edit undo or Control Z as a shortcut. So that's really useful. And so now I clicked left click just one tap here, and then at 7 seconds I'll come over here and I'm going to try to reduce this a bit. And now I'm left clicking and I'm playing around with it, like dragging to. I'm going to undo that because I didn't get what I wanted. And notice the waveform. I'm changing the waveform and I'm dragging it out. So my cursor is way over in the right. So I've dragged it out to 15 seconds. And what's happened here is you notice between 4 and 6.5 seconds, the music is going from peak loudness or the loudest that it's been all the way down to 0. So we'll mute the demo narration here, and now we just want to listen and see how this sounds. So I'm going back up to the top and I'm using the selection tool, and then I'll hit here and I'm going to hit the play button now. So that provides a nice little introduction where it fades out. And so then we'll just take the rest of this and delete it. Okay, I see about 20 of you are here and I'm recording the webinar. What we're doing right now is we're in Audacity. We've imported some files that Dr. Hartshorn provided as a download under the webinar archive, which is here. So you can go in there later and download the zip files from Dropbox. So I have my files into Audacity. I should probably have done this earlier, but I definitely need to save my project. You can go here and go save project, and then I'll call it Thripp webinar, and then today's date. And so what it's saving is a file that just has instructions on what to do. It doesn't provide any value to anyone else. So when you submit your assignment at the end, you want to do an export. An export as an MP3 or an OOG is fine as well. Just the problem with Wave here is that the file size is much too large. Adam's asked how you crop the audio clip. The way I did that was just by, in fact, I can probably undo what I just did to show you again. So I took the audio, and this was an envelope where I used this envelope tool and I dragged to make the sound go down in volume. And then to cut off the end here, I left clicked where the cursor is. I hope you can see the cursor now. It's right around 7 seconds. And then I left click and I held and I dragged all the way to the end. Now, right here, there's not really any sound, so you're not seeing a visual cue on this track exactly because there's no blue here. But when you look up here, notice that this area is blue. Now that's a visual cue that I selected that region of audio. So I'm dragging back over. I still have my selection intact. And then I just hit the delete key on the keyboard to delete. You could also go up to edit and click delete there, which would do exactly the same thing. Okay, so going back to where we were here, we have his introduction. So we're going to unmute that, play around with the gain a little bit on the music, and I think that I will take the intro, which is the top track, demo narrative. Maybe I'll call it, I'll rename it narration. And then I will delete the first 1.2 seconds. As you see, there's no audio there. And that way there won't be a blank space at the beginning.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Module 8 overview for the Multimedia Project for EME 6507. In tonight's podcast, we will discuss some key issues to consider as you are developing your final multimedia project, which is due on November 24th.
Okay, so there we just heard it, and we have this Joe Farron music, and we made it minus 25 decibels, and we used the envelope tool from about 4 to 7 seconds to make it fade out. And it sounded pretty good, so I think we can just leave that like it is. So now we will continue to listen a bit here.
Which is due on November 24th. So let's begin.
And what Dr. Hartshorn did here is he left the gap to insert some fancy audio effects in between seconds 15 and a half to 18 and a half. If you look at his script, he recorded these separately where he says number 1, number 2, number 3, and he added an echo effect, so it sounds very dramatic. And so if you were recording something which you'll have to do for your assignment, you would use the record button, which is up here at the top left. It's the big red button. Let's test it now.
In tonight's podcast, we will discuss some key issues to.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna do undo record because I don't know where I just recorded. It looks like when you record, it actually double tracks it. So if I mute here, I can try just recording onto the onto the last but not least track. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm testing the record tool at the moment. Then I hit stop. And so then here, I should have a recording. I've muted every other track, and I only recorded it onto the last but not least track around the 6.5 second mark.
Testing, one, two, three. I'm testing the record tool at the moment.
And so that's how you would record. Now, prior to recording, you might need to double check up here where it has a little microphone icon. There'll be a drop down. So I have a Logitech webcam connected. And so here you see I'm using that HD Pro Logitech webcam as my microphone. But then if you were using a different microphone, you might want to select one of the other options. This is a USB microphone. You could also plug in a cable into your computer to record. And so that's how you get your audio into Audacity. So you can do both your recording and your editing and your exporting all in one program. All right. Any questions about recording or anything to date? I mean, so far that I've talked about. Oh, okay. Thanks, Tom. I think one person, Luke, said, can you give a hypothetical example of an advanced organizer? Sure. An advanced organizer would be exactly, for example, what Dr. Hartshorn says at the beginning here. He says, welcome. In tonight's podcast, we discuss key issues as you're developing your final multimedia project, which is due the 24th. This is an advanced organizer. Obviously, you could just start out jumping right into like what your final submission should be, but by providing this information up front, it helps prepare people and it makes them retain more of what you talk about. For Cameron, we've got a question. How do you import your own music? You do the same thing you did for importing the demo files. If you have your music in a file already, you go to File, Import, and Audio. And then you might have it be like Cameron's song.mp3, and then you would import it like that, and it would show up. So here I just imported the Joe Farron track again, and now it's at the bottom just to demonstrate. Of course, that's a 4-minute song, and I've already edited it up here to reduce it to 8 seconds. And then when I imported that, Audacity changed the view. It zoomed out, so I want to zoom back in because I'm editing at a finer granularity. So here I zoom back in, and now I'm seeing 30 seconds of audio at once instead of all 4 minutes. And there's only like 2.5, 3 minutes of total narration in this example. It just shows 4 minutes because that file with the Joe Farron music is 4 minutes long. So I've got that muted. I'm going to mute last but not least. And the next step is here we're going to insert the number 1. So to play it, I'll mute the narration. And I want to have everything muted except for number 1. And then you can hear it. So I'm clicking, sometimes it's a little bit tricky. You can also use the left and right arrow keys on your keyboard. All right, here it goes. So I have a couple of options here. Right now, number 1 is in a separate track, but I think the easiest way to do it is to just copy this up to the main track and insert it here. As you see for the Joe Farron intro, I kept it as a second track, and I'm double tracking it, meaning that in the end I'm going to have both of these unmuted, and then the rest of the Joe Farron track is just blank. And at the very end, I might add some outro that'll be like the opposite of this. This is kind of like how the Beatles, for example, used to have to edit their music. They would use tape, and then they would be splicing together bits of tape. It was not as advanced though because everything was irreversible. When we edit digitally though, we can undo, we can make backup copies, and we're not destroying the original recording just to edit it, which is excellent. So here I take the number 1, and you see 2 waveforms all the time here because of dual channel, where you have stereo sound, a left and a right. Now it actually looks like on some of them, the stereo is really just mono. Like if you look at Dr. Hartshorn's narration, the top and the bottom waveforms, they look identical. So that's just mono and it's duplicated. But then when you look at the music here, you'll notice the waveforms are actually a little different because that file actually has two different audio tracks where the left is a little bit different from the right ear or the right speaker. But you can just leave it as stereo for simplicity so we don't have to make it mono. And that way, we're leaving it stereo, we're retaining the stereo property of the intro music. So here I'm taking my cursor again and I'm left clicking at 3 seconds on the number one track. And so I'm going to drag over. And so now I selected all of that and I can go to edit and I can do, I'll do copy. So copy is it's different from cut because it doesn't delete the original. It makes a duplicate. And so I'll mute that now. And it's on my clipboard right now. The clipboard can only hold one thing. It's that invisible space where one item or a collection of items is held in memory on your computer. And so then when I go over here, I'll go to like 16 seconds where the gap was, and I'm going to go up to edit and paste, or I could press Control plus V as a shortcut to paste. And then you'll see it's inserted the number one audio. Let's see how that sounds.
As you are developing your final multimedia project, which is due on November 24th. So let's begin. Number one.
Number one's a bit loud, so we might want to edit that a bit. The easiest way to do that would probably be to undo the insert and go back to the number one, and maybe we can use the envelope tool to reduce it a little bit like that. I just left click there. Notice how the waveform got a bit smaller, and then it won't be quite as loud. So then I'm doing what I did before. I'm selecting, I'm copying, I'm pasting. I'm using keyboard shortcuts, and I put a little bit. Well, let me undo that and do it here. So when I just undid, I'm doing it real fast, I know, but what I'm really just doing is I used the Control plus Z keyboard shortcut, which meant I held the Control key down and I pressed Z, and that undid it. And then,
so let's begin. Number one.
okay, and then there's a little clicking at the end, so I'll select that and delete that. And then when I inserted it, it made too much blank space here. So that looks pretty good, I think. I don't know what this black line is here. I'm going to try to delete that. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, I think that's the beginning of the envelope where I reduced the volume.
So let's begin. Number one. Your final submission must be web-based and must be hosted on your rhartshorn.com subfolder.
All right.
Consequently, it is critical that you address web design and usability issues presented in the course. Issues such as contrast, a consistent design layout, consistent spacing, clear links, external links opening in new windows, linking to site names rather than URLs, and others will all be important. It is expected you show growth in design skills from earlier in the course.
So Dr. Hartshorn just did that on
Unlike
purpose.
Other assignments in the
So this right here, he did that on purpose to show how to delete it. Luckily, he left a lot of blank space around it, so it makes it easier to isolate that And also, he wants us to insert a number two here. So we'll just take this and just cut it out, and we'll cut out. We can actually cut out more of the blank space because if you notice when I inserted the number one, it didn't overwrite anything. It just inserted it and kept everything else. So then I had to delete some blank space on that one. Just for a little bit of expediency, I won't adjust the waveform on number two. Also, it looks like if you're looking here, it may be a little quieter. So here's number two. Oh, sorry about that. I had to mute this one to show you that one. So Julie's just asked the question, are we creating our own sound clip and editing it, or are we supposed to download his sound clip and edit it the way he wants? So the answer is that you need to create your own sound clips. You need to find your own background music, and you also have to select your own topic on what you want to do. I'm just showing you Dr. Hartshorn's as an example of how to use Audacity and how to import files, edit, export, etc. And so for your topic, that could be anything you want. when you go over onto the modules, there's an area, sorry, I'm jumping around so much here, but there's an area called sample audio projects in week 4 where you can see 2 other students' projects. Yes, you could probably use GarageBand just fine, as long as at the end that you're getting an MP3 or an OGG or not a WAV file, but an MP3 file of the recording, then that is fine to use a different program. We show Audacity because it's more basic and it's also open source and free and can be used on Windows as well as Mac, whereas GarageBand is limited to Mac and iPad. Here we go with an example.
This time on TechCast, a glance at the tech literacy assessment. The email ticket assessment is one tool used by Gaston County schools to gauge student preparedness, and the message to superiors.
So this student made a presentation about a tool called TechCast that was being used in their school district for teaching and learning. And so you can listen to that as an example. But actually, it went over time. Make sure when you do yours, it's not 3 minutes and 3 seconds, but rather 3 minutes, 0 seconds or less. And then here's one on Shakespeare. Here you see they did the intro.
Welcome to tips for reading Shakespeare.
And then faded it out.
Tip number 1: when reading verse, do not pause at the end of the line. One of the common
So that
mistakes.
fade out was a similar procedure to what we just did here when we used the envelope tool on the music and faded that out. So yeah, you're using your own topic, and then it could be anything you want, and you have a lot of leeway on whether you want to do 1 minute or 3 minutes or 2 minutes. Depends how much time you want to put into it. All right, so we got a number 2. We'll take this number 2, and I'm just going to copy from about a third of a second in because there's just blank space before that, and I've copied up to like 2 and 3/4 of a second. And so now I hit Control C, which is the same as going to edit and hitting copy. And now it's on the clipboard. I'll unmute the narration. I had just muted it to show you what number 2 sounded like, and then I muted number 2 again. We've gone over to a part where he said an and then we deleted the and then I deleted some blank space, which actually made it hard for me to figure out where I was.
Earlier in the course. Unlike other assignments in the course.
So this is number 2 here, around 49 seconds. We'll put that there, pasted it. I'll get rid of a little bit of this space here. Let's see how this sounds.
Design skills from earlier in the course. Unlike other assignments in the course, there is no rubric for the final multimedia project. This is because there are so many different options and types of media that can be implemented in a variety of ways that a comprehensive rubric is difficult to utilize.
So that sounds pretty good. So we're up to number 2, and he's got this, which you could record on your own. One of the nice things you can do here is if you're like me and you're always tripping over your words and saying you can split it up into more than one file and then delete if you need to. For example, we just deleted an there. Typically, your wouldn't have such a big gap around them, and so that would make it harder to isolate. But what I'm saying here is that each of these things, number 1, number 2, number 3, you can record them separately. And that way, if you have to do a second take because you messed up, you don't have to go back and start from the beginning. You would just go back to the beginning of that section and start it again. Now, when you read, make sure that you don't sound wooden. You don't want to sound like you're reading off a script. That's one of the rubric items. So you have to practice that a bit. You might actually want to just have some bullet points in front of you rather than a script, and that way it'll discourage you from reading right off of the slides or off of the page. I will show some notes at this time, and I'll share these with you later. They're notes that I just wrote when I was looking at the recording of Dr. Hartshorn from last year. So as we've noted, it's just narration and some background music. You want to choose something that's best done with audio, so you don't want to make something about, oh, here's how to upload to your FTP server, because then audio is not going to be a good modality. It would be better to use a screencast and show the actual steps visually. And of course, watch out for distracting sounds. I have an infant son, and my fiance just took him over to his grandfather's house because he was screaming so much it would be really distracting. If you're using background music, you want to consider whether it's distracting and make sure that it's quiet enough that you can hear over it. So if you want to use music through the whole thing, you could do that, but you probably definitely actually want to put the gain way down so it's not too loud. And then the reason we're asking for MP3 is it's a smaller file size. Wave is very inefficient. It takes up like 20 megabytes just for a couple minutes, and that uses way too much bandwidth, and it would be bad for everyone. And back in the old days, we would have to download over dial-up, and a 20 megabyte file would actually take 2 hours. But right now, most people can download a 20 megabyte file in a couple minutes or less, but you just don't want to do it because it's a waste of space. And so in your Audacity, you have an option to export, and you want to use that. And if you can't get it to work for some reason, you can still export as a wave and use a website called Zamzar to convert it. This is a website where you upload a file, and then when you have that file uploaded, you choose your format, which would be MP3, and it'll convert it for you and let you download it. Well, you got to scroll down to music and then convert. Other items to watch out for, make a new folder to organize your files. That'll make it easier when you're working with your different folders and files. So I've done here webinar audio. And then the Word document to organize your thoughts. But it's not required to be submitted. So when you go to submit, we don't need your script. We just need your audio file. So this is just for you when you make a file like this. And you can skip that if you feel like you don't need it. And so I just mentioned splicing together and the tools. Like I hope that you know the pause, play, stop, record buttons. Those are all on the top left here. But most of these other features, we don't actually use them for this because they're not needed for assignment this basic. And some of them are just duplicates of the edit menu. Like here, you're going to see cut, copy, and paste in the third row. And those are also under edit. And then there's a third way, which is to use these keyboard shortcuts. So don't get overwhelmed because the interface is cluttered. And then, of course, I mentioned that when you save the project, all you're getting with that saved project is a file that has some metadata in it, but it doesn't do anything if you upload it. Like if you notice, let's say that I go and I open it in a text reader. Well, you're seeing this is just an XML file. It's a markup language, but it doesn't have anything useful to anyone else because it's just referencing, all of the little clips that Audacity's created inside this data folder where there's like dozens of different files. So if you submit the audio file, project file, that's no use to me, and I just have to ask you to resubmit as an MP3. I'll make sure not to submit that. I know it's kind of ridiculous that Audacity uses like 300 different files just for a tiny little presentation. And then also, I want you to give credit. Dr. Hartshorn is very big on crediting people. So it's important wherever you go that you don't violate copyright. Even if it's fair use or if it's public domain, you still want to tell where you got that from. Like, oh, where did the intro music come from? This is a Joe Farron song. Okay, so now we're back over to Audacity. Where we left off was on number 2, I think. Oh, Adam just asked how to give credit in the recording. So do it verbally at the end of the recording, kind of like the credits on a slideshow or movie. Just at the end, you can say, like, thanks to such and such person for providing music that I used for this recording.
I conduct an overall qualitative analysis of design and usability, presentation of content, and application of media. So what I'm looking for is, does it function appropriately?
Okay, so he said so, and it wasn't really necessary. So if we want to be real, tricky here, we'll edit that out. This right here, what we just heard was so. Watch this. Delete that, and now listen to it.
An application of media. What I'm looking for is, does it function appropriately? Does it look good? Is the content clear and appropriate? And are the benefits of media maximized in their application while the drawbacks minimized.
So I got rid of the word "so," and it sounded pretty clean. It might not always be like that. It could be embedded if people run their words together, and you won't be able to remove it that easily. But in that case, I could remove the word "so" quite easily by editing the waveform.
Those from earlier in the course.
So what we just heard was number two. I just backtracked to show you that again around 49 seconds. And then number two ends at 1 minute and 26 seconds. So here we have a gap, and this is where he wants number three, obviously, to begin. So then if you were doing that, you would do the same thing again, go to your number three here. I think you can just copy it without even unmuting it. So I'm going to try that and see whether it works or not. So I'm taking this number three and I'm copying it. And then I'll go over here to where the gap is. This time I left the gap in place so I have a visual cue of where to insert number three. And I'll put it with like a gap of about a third of a second. And so I've got my line here. That's where it's going to go in and then paste. And there's my number three. So now I got my number three, and I'm going to delete some of the gap here because it's about 3 seconds of silence. And so I'll test it by left clicking here and then hitting play. This play button here does the same thing, I think.
While the drawbacks minimize.
Yes.
Be sure you utilize media appropriately, as that will be a major factor in the overall assessment of your final project. As mentioned in issue 2, it is important that you use media in appropriate instructional ways, as well as maximize the benefits of particular media while also minimizing the drawbacks.
All right, so that was number three. Then we've got a pause.
If you have any questions moving forward, do not hesitate to contact me. I would be happy to discuss ideas and tweaks with you. However, I will not provide a review of the final multimedia project as I've done with previous media projects in the course. This is simply too time prohibitive and detracts from one of the major objectives of the course. That is all for this week's podcast. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
All right, so that's 2 minutes and 18 seconds. And then he's got a little gap here from 1 minute and 48 and a half to 1 minute 52 and a half. I think there was something he recorded that we could put in there. And what I'm going to do is after this ends, I'll upload this file so you can take a look at it on your own if you want to see exactly the project file and the export. Let's see, I think here, this is, to hear it without this one, I got to mute the top track. Oh, and when you're going, you should always save. You should save project, Control S. That way, if your computer crashes or the power goes out, you don't lose your data. You should do that quite often. So here's number three. Oh, we just used that one. And then number four. I don't think we need number four. There was another recording. Oh, there it is. So we don't need number four, but we do need this last but not least. Here, let's hear it. And then if you remember earlier, to demonstrate recording, I did.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. I'm testing the record tool at the moment.
So that was just me earlier testing that out. But here we'll take the number last but not least, and we'll copy that audio. And we'll mute the track. You can copy it while the track is muted as well, and the same, it would work that way as well. So now we'll mute these two. And so over here, we're going to paste that in around 1 minute and 49. And then we'll edit out this blank space.
While also minimizing the drawbacks. If you have any questions moving forward, do not hesitate to contact me. I would be happy to discuss ideas and tweaks with you. However, I will not provide a review of the final multimedia.
Wow, we heard that part already. Let's see what happened at the very end.
That is all for this week's podcast. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Okay, so that's pretty much the whole narration's done now. But we do want to have some music at the end. So what can we do? Well, maybe we can just like make it real simple for ourselves and take this audio and copy it to the end, and then try to like fade this in as well as fade it out. So now I'm on the Joe Farron track, which is blank the whole time except for the first 7 seconds. But then I'm gonna put it here and see how that sounds. Let's move it a bit over here. I'm trying to line it up so it kind of fades out at the same time as the last bit of speech. There we go, that looks good. So the way I was doing that was I was pasting it and then seeing how it looked in comparison to this time for the first narration track. And then I was doing the Control Z shortcut to undo and then Control V again to paste it in different spots and see if it lines up right. So right now it's probably not going to sound too good. Let's see.
Tracks from one of the major objectives of the course. That is all for this week's podcast. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Oh, good. I think we don't even need to fade it in. Adriana asked, good idea. Does that give it continuity? What does that mean? If you're not sure what you're asking. I'm going to move this over a little bit. That looks good. Using the same music at the beginning and end. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea because then you have a consistent theme. And also, in this example, it was a lot easier than finding another recording. But it's also good to have continuity. If you listen to podcasts, usually they'll use the same music quite often, like at the intro and then at the end. And they do on each episode, and it becomes sort of a trademark for that podcast. So here, this is two different tracks, and you see there's that little blank space in between where he says.
That is all for this week's podcast.
There's a blank space here.
One of the major objectives of the course. That is all for this week's.
So between major objectives of the course and that is all, there's a blank space, and we can have the music just start there, and it works pretty well. And we've already made this whole track be minus 25 decibels, so the loudness is good. Let's hear it.
Too time prohibitive and detracts from one of the major objectives of the course. That is all for this week's podcast. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
All right. There's a tiny little click at the end that I'll delete from the narration around 2 minutes, 18 and a half seconds. And then the music can fade out. So we'll end like right here at 2 minutes and 19. And so that would be a complete assignment, I believe. Let's look again and make sure we got all of the stuff. I mean, we're not quite done yet because we still have to go in and export the file. So he introduced himself. He addressed the topic. He had the background music matches. I guess that kind of means don't use something like heavy metal. And we removed those lengthy pauses. We deleted those. We did keep the audio at the same level. The narration was the same, except that on number one, we kind of reduced that a little bit so it wasn't as loud. You could probably have kept it just as loud. I wouldn't have taken points off of that. We did remove an and we removed a so as well. Background noise was good. If you have a microphone that's not as good or you have background noise, there is a way to remove it. It's called a low pass filter. It's a bit technical. It might be under here where it says edit low pass filter. I won't cover that here, but if you have more questions about it, feel free to send me a message. And he sounded natural, and he used advanced organizers, which was the first paragraph, and planned and structured it well. So we're not quite done yet. You can't just stop here because we need to export what we've got. And so I can leave these other files in the project file as long as they're all muted. I'll delete this one, I think. I had just inserted this one as a demo. So I deleted the long music file. Excuse me. And so I've only got the two top tracks unmuted because these other ones are just the numbers 1 through 4, which you only use 3 of, and the last but not least. So I'll save the project again. And now the last step, export. I'm going to do MP3. You can use MP3. And then for bitrate, constant 128 kilobits per second is sufficient for this assignment. And then you can just leave it as joint stereo. And then you can name it whatever. By default, it takes the name of the project file, but changes the extension to MP3. So it's warning me that my tracks are going to be mixed and exported as one stereo file. But I'm not losing the original project file, I'm just exporting. So I don't know why they warn you for that. It's not really necessary. I have 3 monitors, so I had to drag this over to the monitor you're seeing. What popped up now is a metadata entry area where you could put in some metadata if you wanted. These go into the MP3 file and it show up on your car stereo or an MP3 player if you loaded the MP3 onto there. So here we might put Richard Hartshorn. Someone asked, Christine asked, I know you said it could be on any topic, but the assignment overview mentions it being for the multimedia project. Does it have to tie into our final multimedia project? So the answer to that is no, it does not. The multimedia project is just used here as an example of making an audio project about the multimedia project. But if you wanted to tie in, that would be excellent because there is, on the multimedia project, I believe there's a, I can't recall. Yeah, I think that for the multimedia project, it could be a little different, or you can relate it to it if you'd like. It's sort of up to you. You do have the ability to embed this audio into your multimedia project, which is your website, if you'd like. So can keep that in mind to decide whether you could create a little bit less work for yourself if you make the audio project about your final project and then embed the final project, embed the audio onto there. And that could be done using YouTube or a different service. Okay, so we're back here on the export and we're exporting to an MP3 and it's asked us if we want to put in some metadata. So I'm putting artist name, Richard Hartshorn, and then track. Oh, I could credit myself if I wanted. All right, and then we'll put multimedia project instructions. And there's not really an album or track number, so I'll just delete that. As for this metadata, though, it's actually completely optional for this assignment. I'm not going to look at your metadata, so it's kind of superfluous. It won't be a graded item. Oh, and then this is the lame encoder, which is funny, but it's a compressor that takes the audio and reduces the file size. So we're using the lame encoder to take our WAV files and put them into an MP3 file to save space. It does get rid of a little bit of the data, but when it comes to narration, you'd never notice when you have 128 kilobits per second, which is what we chose, then you wouldn't be able to notice the difference between this and the WAV file, except maybe a little bit if you listen real close when it comes to the music. So I'm looking around and I don't remember where it got exported to. So I'm going to do save as MP3. And so then here, I just did that to open up the same folder where it was and see where it is. And so I'm seeing it's under Documents, Audacity. So I don't want it there. So I'm going to take this file that's already there that I just exported. I'm going to cut it, and then I'll paste it over here into my folder with my audio files. Someone asked, Luke, I like to use WeVideo to prepare audio files. If I submit my result as MP3, is that okay? Yes, that would be fine. I just care about the final project. I mean, what comes at the end. I'm not looking at your audio project file. I'm also not looking at your script. You don't even have to submit your script for this assignment. So that is perfectly fine. Okay, so now we've got our MP3 file. It's about 2.3 megabytes. We see here it's 2.23 megabytes. And so we play that by double-clicking it, and I have...
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Module 8 overview for the multimedia project for EB6507. In tonight's podcast, we will discuss some key issues to consider as you are developing your final multimedia project, which is due on November 24th. So let's begin. Number 1. Your final submission must be web-based and must be hosted on your rhartshorn.com subfolder. Consequently, it is critical that you address web design and usability issues presented in the course. Issues such as contrast, a consistent design layout, consistent spacing, clear links, external links opening in new windows, linking to site names rather than URLs, and others will all be important. It is expected you show growth in design skills from earlier in the course. Unlike other assignments in the course, there is no rubric for the final multimedia project. This is because there are so many different options and types of media that can be implemented in a variety of ways that a comprehensive rubric is difficult to utilize. In evaluating these assignments, I conduct an overall qualitative analysis of design and usability, presentation of content, and application of media. What I'm looking for is, does it function appropriately? Does it look good? Is the content clear and appropriate? And are the benefits of media maximized in their application while the drawbacks minimized? Be sure you utilize media appropriately, as that will be a major factor in the overall assessment of your final project. As mentioned in issue 2, it is important that you use media in appropriate instructional ways, as well as maximize the benefits of particular media while also minimizing the drawbacks. If you have any questions moving forward, do not hesitate to contact me. I would be happy to discuss ideas and tweaks with you. However, I will not provide a review of the final multimedia project as I have done with previous media projects in the course. This is simply too time prohibitive and detracts from one of the major objectives of the course. That is all for this week's podcast. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
All right, that sounded pretty good. I did pretty good on that just for my first attempt, didn't I? All right. Well, I've edited audio before, but it's been a while. Okay. The next thing you would do is go to assignments. I'm in the student view, and then you go to your audio project. When you go to submit, I've added this warning again about not doing the Audacity file because I've taught a lot of undergraduate courses, and every time we have an assignment, I have to go back and a few times ask a few different people to resubmit because they submitted something that wasn't actually the right file. So that's why I want to make sure that you put in the MP3, not a different one. If you do, I'll have to ask you again. So here I'm going to select this one. This is our MP3 file, and then I would just submit it. All right, and then so I submitted my project, and then for your project file, you notice it is quite large. For some reason, it's 263 megabytes. I have no reason. There's no reason why it should be that big that I can think of, other than that Audacity is doing a lousy job of storing the data, or maybe it's storing all of the undo edits as uncompressed data. So I will put this out for you, but I'm going to compress it into a zip file. And so you can look at what I did here on your own by loading it in Audacity. I just have to double check whether you can actually do that without changing the folder structure to match mine. I want to ask at this time, I know I've been on for 55 minutes and I went a little longer than I probably should have, but are there any questions that I could answer for you? Okay, it looks like because here it just has a reference to that folder that I should be able to share this project file in a zip file, and then you can look at exactly what I did by just extracting it into a folder of your choice on your computer. So I'll do that soon. This was an earlier one. Okay, I've got two people typing questions. Oh, for background hums, I would probably use the. I think there is an easier way. I just can't remember at the moment, but the low pass filter might do it as well. Let's see. We can try it right now. I'm not sure if it'll work too well. Select the audio for low pass filter to use. For example, Control plus A keyboard shortcut to select all and then try again. Let's see if I do it here, what happens. Okay, so here it's telling me what frequency I want to delete. Uh, hmm. I'll just try the preview.
For EME 6507. In tonight's podcast, we will discuss some
So
key
try
issues
that
to
out
consider.
and then see if that works. And then you can do Control A or Edit Select All. Oh, there's not actually one here, but the Control A shortcut to do the low pass filter and then see preview it to see how it sounds. Well, that didn't sound good. I want to just show you real quick if I put in like let's say 5,000 hertz.
To consider as you are developing your final multimedia project, which is due on November 24th. So let's begin.
Let's see. Now if I do 50 hertz, it's going to sound like nothing.
To consider as you are developing your final multimedia project.
And I can't hear anything there. So what it's doing is it's deleting every frequency above the hertz that you're entering. So if you enter 500 hertz, you're not hearing the whole harmonic beauty of Dr. Hartsman's voice because although the human voice resonates for a male around 300 hertz, like that's the base frequency, and then there's overtones up above that. You don't want to delete all of those, so that's why the default of 1,000 hertz was really good. And then you could experiment. But this is more to remove a high pitched noise in the background, which is kind of counterintuitive. Is there a high pass filter? Hmm. Yeah, here we go. So high pass filter does the opposite.
To consider as you are developing your final multimedia project, which is due on
Now
November
notice
24th.
here he sounds very
So let's begin.
nasally, and that's because we've gone in and we've deleted all of the sound below 1,000 hertz. For that, that's called the high pass filter. Everything above the 1,000 hertz is passing through. But then the low pass filter would be used, the previous one, for high pitched noises, and the high pass filter is used for low frequency hums that are in the background. So if there was something happening at like 300 hertz or below, we could do that
To
and get rid of
consider
it.
as you are developing your final multimedia project.
And then we would hit OK if we were going to use that. And we would also have selected the entire file to make it apply to all of it and then save it like that. All right, I know that was a bit technical, but I hope that was helpful. Oh, and Audition, I don't know how it works there, but there's probably the same sort of features. They just might be in a different area. Now, I have one question from Adriana I haven't read yet. When I pull up Audacity, it looks different than yours. The scissors are on the second line, whereas it is the third line on yours. Is there a reason? I'm not really sure. It shouldn't make any difference. It looks like that in Dr. Hartshorn's recording from last year. So it looks like it has just two lines like yours does on his. I didn't change any of the default settings, so I'm thinking maybe they. Sorry, I'm jumping around here. There it is. So you can watch his as well and see how he did it, and you'll see it looks like that. It's probably just something Audacity changed lately in the new version of the software, which is version 2.32. You can move this around if you want. You like drag, and so if I wanted to, I could better utilize my space by moving the interface like that. So if you see now, I just left clicked here and I dragged, and that way I'm only having two instead of three bars to have more room over here. So if you were using this quite often, you'd probably want to do that in order to use the space on the screen real estate better. Let's see what my zip file, how big it turned out. Where'd it go? Well, I'll do that later and I'll send it to you. Oh, here we go. Okay, so 51 megabytes is like really big. And so what I'll probably do for this is I'm going to require you, if you want to open it, to use a program called 7-zip. And so what 7-zip does is it's sort of like a tarball where it makes a file that is much better compressed by doing compression in between all of the files. So when you extract it, in order to extract the folder, it has to um, it has to extract every single file in it at once. So I want to add to archive, and so I'm going to do 7-zip. Let's see how that turns out. And at this point, we're not really doing anything directly related to the project. We're just kind of showing you something cool. Well, that didn't help at all because it was 73,000 kilobytes. But I'll get back to you later with that, and I can upload this if I have to. And then you'll also have a copy of this. All right. Sorry I haven't been talking loud enough. I'll get better at these as I do more of them, I'm sure. I've done a few webinars before, but never at the graduate level.